their architecture according to that. So when a new tool comes in and you inevitably have to move towards that, one of the biggest barriers becomes that you cannot transform the schema of your data to suit the new tool. So if you provide data modeling capabilities, then you provide this ability to transition from one tool to the other one. The speed has started mattering a lot. So I've worked with both companies with a large volume and a relatively small volume, and I did not really appreciate the value of how fast reports can be run until I actually saw really, really large volumes of data, like running into hundreds of millions of data points. And the same solution that I had adopted earlier just did not scale. And even after, advocating it, I was the first one to sort of say, let's pull the chain on this because it's not scaling it's fairly irritating to wait several seconds and minutes to see your reports come up when, this is all about self-serve analytics. So, by the way, self-serve is a fundamental, assumption that anybody enters. So if any of these tools is not self-serve, like, for example, Splunk is a great example. For very wrong reasons, it gets thrown into the same mix. It is not the same thing. And for very good reason, because Splunk is not self-serve. It requires some fairly advanced technical skills to actually run it. And if you adopt it from the perspective of replacing one of the tools you mentioned, then it's just not self-serve. So self-serve is a basic prerequisite in addition to the four I mentioned. I'm sure there are others. Well, pricing is obviously, fairly important. I think I alluded to that earlier. There are other assumptions that we make when we purchase these tools these days, actually, not previously. One of which is storage, that it comes either for free or it's factored into the cost. So we don't want to be paying for the features or the value add of the product separate from the storage. And there are tools that still do this, and it becomes a management hassle because further down the road, you have to actually start hiring somebody or telling one of your engineers to start deleting data that's not relevant. So now that, it breaks the whole premise of software as a service, you actually have one of your engineers servicing the product internally. I'm sure there are others. I think I'm trying to sort of, obviously there's a bias for recent experiences, but more importantly, I'm trying to also stay high level to, guide this discussion. But happy to sort of dig into these things further if needed. Yeah, no, that's helpful. That's I think, a good list. And I was wondering if we could just, walk through, I guess we got to 6 or 7, just trying to get sort of their relative level of importance. If we could give each of those a score, so to speak, on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is extremely important to an extremely important factor to the decision, or where 1 is not that big of an impact to the decision. Do you feel comfortable doing that? Just walking through. Yeah. We can start with the feature set. Yeah. So feature set, I would say, is probably the highest importance. Was that 5 or was that was 5? So feature set, I would say, is 5 for somebody in my function. Okay. What about data storage integration? 2, best case 3. It ends up being a concern, although we are often willing to make compromises and just, wholesale move things because especially at smaller companies, data sizes aren't that huge. Got it. And then we had the capabilities for modeling. 3 or 4, 3.5, let's say. Okay, great. And then the speed, the performance. Yes, large company, that's a 5. Got it. Small company, I'd say probably even a 2, no more than a 2. Got it. And then we said self-serve analytics was basically a prerequisite. So that's higher score. Yeah. And then we talked briefly about price, and let's frame this as price to value. How important that is. Yes. So I would say that's an important framing, price to value, flexibility in pricing structures.